225 years have passed since the inauguration of President Washington for the first time. That's 225 years of government under the Constitution. It's a notable anniversary, a notable event. Significant in part because it lasted so long. When Washington gave his inaugural address, he said he knew he was speaking to a people who doubted, and a world that doubted if this American experiment was even going to work. Even others who thought it might work for a while felt that the government would have to change periodically. It has changed, but it has not changed as in other countries through revolution and upheaval. It has changed through evolution. And the Constitution and its understanding and its uses have been able to adapt to the tremendous changes. But what those people had started, what Washington had started as president of the Constitutional Convention, what the states had started by ratifying the Constitution, and what Washington started, along with that first Congress, in New York, when they started this new country, when that new government got going, and Washington as its leader, as president, was centrally important to that. What they got going then has endured now for 225 years. That itself is remarkable and notable. Now, people knew this was a special event. And in some ways, Washington being sworn in as president started the new government. Congress had already started meeting a few weeks before. Even the vice president had been sworn in. But in so many ways, the people were connecting this new government with the presidency. That's not something the founders initially assumed. They thought it'd be a government of the Congress. But what became the unifying force of the country was the presidency, and that had been captured in an article in the leading New York newspaper the day before. Now, this today is as you mentioned, the 225th anniversary. This is April 30th. And that date of the date of the swearing in was April 30th, 1789. But a day before, that New York newspaper, and I think it captures it, what they were expecting. In some ways, well, we now know Washington's inauguration was significant because it launched this new government that has lasted for 225 years and counting. But people knew it was important at the time. They had anticipated, they put the weight on it that it has come to realize. And I think in many ways this was captured by a newspaper article the day before the inauguration. New York's leading newspaper at that time, perhaps one of the leading newspapers in the United States, certainly, was the Gazette of the United States. And it ran a bold-faced editorial on April 29, 1789, the day before the inauguration. And that editorial sort of captures it all. It said, and I'll read from it, "We have heard much about the birthday of our Columbia." Columbia meaning the new country, the United States. It was a shorthand for it. "We have heard much about the birthday of our Columbia." That, of course, was the 4th of July. "Tomorrow," the editorial says, "tomorrow is the day of her espousals." That is, the United States' espousals. "When, in the presence of the King of Kings, the solemn compact will be ratified between her," that is, the people of the United States, "and the darling object of her choice. Washington," the paper exclaimed, "by universal suffrage of a great and various people, would become president." Now, that captures the spirit that how much this country's founding, this country's establishment, was tied in with an elected national president, the first and only officer chosen across state lines from the entire country. And that person who was already glorious from his victories in the Revolution, being sworn in as president, marked in many ways, well, as the paper said, the culmination, the marriage of the people with the country. So we've heard about the birthdays. Now this is, well, as the paper was saying, the wedding day. We now have a union And that union has lasted now for 225 years and counting.